an honor to have Dr. Athreya as chief guest for this launch ceremony today. Ladies and gentlemen, requesting Padma Bhushan Dr. Athreya to please honor us with his presidential address.
Ladies and gentlemen, we began with a good evening. The time is approaching to say almost good night. It's an occasion of great ananda, paramananda, that we are releasing a book which has taken a great deal of effort, participation of a number of people. And we've had several very good speeches and we have learned about leadership. We began the function at 6:30. I would like to compliment you for your stamina, interest, jigyasa, that you are staying here to listen to all of us. The hall was full at the start. About 25% of people have been leaving, understandably. It started around 7:45 because people always have families and other things, end of the week. So I'd like to make you an offer that you don't have to listen to another speech. I have no hang-up about being the chief guest, and it's not my need to make a speech. Therefore, if you would rather like to break for dinner, which was to be announced at 8:15, it is now 8:30, I'm quite happy to withdraw and join you at dinner. I have a reasonable appetite. So what is your choice? Would you like to continue, or we rather make it enough? I think the book has been talked about, the subject has been talked about, we've had a lovely evening, I have enjoyed and benefited from it, and I think for a change, we dispense with the chief guest speech and still have a jolly good function.
No way.
You want to hear
Yeah.
अपने जोड़ेंगे साहब
नहीं हम ये पीछे से सुनना चाहते हैं, तो फ्रंट बेंचर को ये बैक बेंचर से सुनना चाहिए। But I'll take a little less time than I had originally planned.
Good, sir. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to join everybody else in congratulating the three authors, the various contributors, the BIMSTEC institution which has supported them. I have a great pleasure reading the manuscript and writing the foreword, and when those of you who read it, you will find that I have highlighted the strengths of the book, comparing it with some other leadership books, and commending it to all students and practitioners of leadership. In this address, I'd like to talk not so much about the book, which has been covered very well, but talk about some very celebrated leaders of the world, of India, of Indian business, of global business, and see what we can learn from celebrated leaders. And I'm sure that a lot of it is reflected in the book in one way or the other. But it is possible that each of us may not know all these leaders who have participated in these. People in a particular industry will know, in the steel industry or in the oil industry and so on. The leaders I'm going to talk about are universally known. Therefore, it will register with each one of us here. And they are practicing the same art and science, leadership that we have talked about. In leadership, there is a model of competencies, which is well known to HR professionals, but many of you here are not from the HR field. Every good leader needs 4 basic sets of attributes. They are together known as CASH, K-A-S-H, K for knowledge, A for attitudes, S for skills, and H for habits. But today, many of the young managers who come into companies already in the last 30 years, they've been coming with an MBA, majority of them, or at least with a BTech, MTech, BCom, MCom, in some cases CA kind of qualification. So the knowledge component is taken care of. What we need to focus in leadership development are the 2 more difficult areas, and there one is relatively even more difficult. The 2 areas that need attention are attitudes and skills. And between the 2, it is my experience over the last 50 years dealing with leaders in India and around the world. For example, I was a HR mentor for Siemens for the Asia Pacific region, 16 countries, various cultures, various foreign investments and so on. So between these 2, what we found more difficult were attitudes and the values behind the attitudes. People can learn skills, decision making, implementation, project management, monitoring, review, appraisal, these can be learned. But the mindset, the attitude, the soul, the atma, the dil, the buddhi that goes with it is more difficult. And I'd like to here highlight the value leaders first and come to skill leaders later. In value leadership, recently in a conference, I was talking about what are the three great challenges to humanity in the 21st century. And to meet those challenges, what kind of leadership we need. And in my analysis, the three biggest challenges facing entire humanity in the 21st century are, first of all, climate change, the way the temperatures are rising, the global, for example, recently in Canada, a river disappeared in 4 days. You might have read about it. It is like a repeat of Saraswati civilization, which disappeared in India 8,000 years ago, and more such disasters can happen. We already have a new category of refugees called climate refugees, who are leaving their homes because they're threatened by water, heat, wildlife, and so on. The first challenge, therefore, is climate change. The second is inequality, rising inequality. Marx is again becoming irrelevant. And 2 years ago, there was a book by a French economist, Thomas Piketty. Some of you may have read reviews of it. Capital in the 21st century. We thought that with Gorbachev and the perestroika, the dissolution of the Soviet Union, capitalism as a system was established and socialism, communism will not come back again. But now there is talk about revolutions, what is happening in many parts of the world, regions wanting autonomy, people wanting to opt out of unions, and the election of Donald Trump is partly the result of increasing inequality in the United States, the 1%, 99% gap that is developing. And some economists like Paul Krugman talk about 0.1% and 99.9%. And India also, this is likely to rise. And the third is terrorism. In my view, terrorism is not the #1 challenge, although it gets lots of headlines. But religious conflict, terrorism, is another challenge. And if you look at leaders who can help us to deal with these kinds of issues, they need to follow the models which have been of great success in the 20th and 19th centuries. And I think in all the debates about climate change, terrorism, inequality, the one leader that keeps coming up in all global conferences is Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi is found more relevant to people around the world than we in India. We tend to forget him. But all these issues, inequality, this point about the world has enough for everyone's need, but not for anyone's greed. Sharing wealth, himself giving away his possessions. And he has been followed by two other great leaders from whom we can learn. Martin Luther King in the US, who fought the civil rights battle for the blacks without violence, and succeeded a great deal more than Nakshal. Recently, the Outlook magazine has brought out a special issue of Silver Jubilee of the Nakshal Revolution, 50th year of Nakshal Revolution. I came to Calcutta in 67 October. Naxalbari had broken out in February 1967. I lived through the Nakshal period in Calcutta the next 6 years, ghettos, various kinds of Cholbena, Hobena, shutdowns of various kinds. And that movement has fizzled out. So violence is not the way. What is in Dickinson's back of his jersey is very valid. The highest bravery is non-violence. And after Martin Luther King, the other leader who is globally remembered, for whose funerals all world leaders came, is Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela has solved one of the greatest problems of human civilization. How two races can come together without a bloodbath. The alternative would have been for the whites in South Africa to have been butchered by the blacks, and it is Mandela who preserved the amity and the unity of those people. Those are the kinds of leaders we need. And if we look at the Indian experience, we have had a great deal of discussion on Jawaharlal Nehru, great leader, no question. But there are two other leaders who have not got their due, who I would like to highlight for your attention today. Subhash Bose. If you look for a Nishkama Karma leader, selfless, daring, going to Japan, Germany, in a submarine in those days, organizing the Indian National Army. Even today, when you hear the songs of the INA, that's India's unity. That's India's purpose. So Subhash Bose was not dreaming about becoming Prime Minister or any members of his dynasty becoming rulers of this country. He was only interested in fighting the British and Indian independence. The third leader we can look at, who is the non-violent mode, but hugely effective, underrated, is Jayaprakash Narayan. I went to the UK as a visiting professor in 1973, and I was given a chair in Strathclyde at a very young age of 34. There was a 5-year tenure for the chair. My wife and I, we were about to come back in 1975 when emergency was declared. We read much more news about the Indian emergency in the British press and in the BBC than people got in India. It went underground. So we postponed our return to India. But in 1977, I was traveling in February when the success of Jayaprakash Narayan's moral crusade against the emergency, against corruption, resulted in the building of Janata Dal. At that time, there were great hopes. It was almost like a democratic revolution. The first real alternative to a single-party Congress rule from 1947 to 1977. Janata Dal came to power. I gave notice to my Vice-Chancellor 2 years ahead of time and came back to India at the end of my 3rd year at the Strathclyde Business School, 78 October. This Janata Dal broke up. That's a tragedy. India could have had a 2-party system if what Jayaprakash Narayan achieved had been sustained. But the Janta philosophy is not there. It is still alive. In 2019, the only credible alternative to Narendra Modi for India's leadership is Nitish Kumar of Janata Dal United, and I think the rest of the opposition, if they have sense enough to unite around him, there is a reasonable chance that a non-BJP secular government may come to us. This is a possibility. So the legacies that great leaders leave behind appear in danger, but they are so strong, the seeds are so powerful that they keep coming back. So Gandhi is alive worldwide, Gandhi is relevant in India. The 2019 150th anniversary that we will be celebrating him. Swachh Bharat is based on Mahatma Gandhi. The National Rural Employment Scheme is based on his name. Let me now come to vision and strategy-based leadership. And in vision and strategy, not just the values which Gandhiji and others, Nehru was an outstanding leader. If you look at the transition from colonialism to democracy, India was the first example of the world of establishing a democracy based on a constitution and adult suffrage in the midst of a lot of argument that how can illiterates vote. Even today you hear about it in the dinner parties of the bourgeoisie in India. Nehru was very clear that every adult citizen of the country must have the voting power. And Nehru was strong on political vision and strategy, but unfortunately he was not so strong on economic vision and strategy. And that is why the strategy, the policies had to be revised in 1991. Between 1950 and 1990, India grew at an average, as all of us know, of 3.5%. So the country lost 2 to 3% growth every year for that 50-year period, when South Korea, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, countries way behind us in education, were growing at that rate. Today we are trying to catch up. The second non-value based but Machiavellian, Chanakya kind of leader, from whom people keep learning leadership lessons, is Churchill. And the thing about Churchill is that he was a very strong war leader. He was a very poor peacetime leader. So leaders have that particular strength which we can draw on. And he was defeated right after the war. And in fact, he was a great enemy of Indian freedom. And books that have come out later about him show the darker side. So leaders are not perfect. They have strengths. They also have lots of weaknesses. Churchill was one of the causes behind the Bengal famine. He was not bothered about Indian lives. If the war had gone longer, there would have been more famines in the country. He did not want Indian independence. He did not want one Pakistan. He wanted India broken up into 100 countries. So he was an imperialist. But on protecting Europe, Britain, against Hitler and the Nazi threat, and saving Christian civilization, he did a great job. He was a fantastic leader. Without, America came late into the war. It was the British leadership and initiative, tenacity, which turned the tide in the Second World War. So from Nehru and Churchill, I would like to come to Narendra Modi. When Pritam Singh talked about Modi, he was talking about Rusi Modi. Many people thought in the audience that he was referring to Narendra Modi. Yeah. Now, we may not all agree on all the philosophy of Narendra Modi. 2002 in Gujarat is still being discussed. But what is remarkable is that he won that election in 2014, and despite the little setback in Delhi and Bihar, he continues to win. The UP win was not anticipated by anybody in India, any party, even the BJP. And now journalists who have been highly critical of him are agreed on one thing, that he is a great communicator. He is a great organizer. He works very hard. Recently in one of the rallies, he joked with the audience, huge audience in UP, मैं पहला प्रधानमंत्री हूँ जिनके पास ये पूछा जा रहा है, आप प्रधानमंत्री तो बन गए हो, इतना काम क्यों करते हो? Why are you working so hard? He sleeps 4 hours a day, works 18 hours, so does Yogi Adityanath. Modi is now talking about a new vision of a new India 2022. He is not bothered about 2019, he is looking beyond that. What is that vision? He wants an India in which everybody is conscious of being an Indian first and any other identity later. Sabka Vikas, Sabka Saath. So let us see if he delivers on it, if he sticks to it. He has a lot of other fringes in the party. So what he may achieve, if he continues till 2022, very likely, economic inclusion is possible. All minorities, all parts of India, all castes of Hindu society would participate in the economy. Social inclusion is still a question mark. So we have to also watch our leaders, keep evaluating from below, and not become hero worshippers of any leader at any time. From my experience from Calcutta and later, interaction with Indian businesses, Marwari, Gujarati, Parsi, South Indian, Chettiar, various businesses, if I were to pick out some examples of outstanding leadership from whom we can learn, on the top of the list would come G.D. Birla. In pre-independence days, the Congress political movement and Indian business had a very amicable relationship. It was in 1947 to 1890 that business and government in India had an adversarial relationship. Since 91, we have re-established a partnership with business and government. CII, FICCI, ASSOCHAM are all partners in formulation of policy. And G.D. Birla has been followed by Aditya Birla, another great strategist who took his company global during the license permit Raj, and now Kumar Mangalam Birla, and we have Sony here, a representative of that group, doing very well, going great guns. It does not mean that every business succeeds or that all of them create the same kind of shareholder value, but overall the group strategy is clearly articulated. There is leadership development within for succession. Now, despite the various criticisms, we must admire the leadership of Dhirubhai Ambani to build such a huge enterprise during the license permit Raj. And if he broke rules, Swedish consultants with whom I met several times said that India needed people like him, only then it can grow in the license permit Raj. They called it growth of plants through asphalt. Greenery through asphalt is what he built, and now his sons are taking it forward. Mega companies, the very fact that Jio can come in and shake up the telecom industry shows the huge power of investment. In the public sector, it has been my pleasure to work with several great leaders. Out of them, if I were to pick one, it is V. Krishnamurthy. His record is unmatched. He not only built BHEL, which is the first company, the first large electric power manufacturing company in the country, but he built two very different kind of enterprises. Maruti, which is in consumer durable, cars for the first time, and it was after Maruti came, the 800, that the whole idea of the automobile in India changed. We were stuck with 20,000 cars per annum of Ambassador and Fiat. And some of you are here too young to remember that period. And people waited 7-10 years to get a car. And you had to know an IAS officer or a minister to even get on the list, waiting list for those cars. Now you look at the number of vehicles that are available. Maruti has become larger than Suzuki of Japan, its parent company. Maruti will be the biggest exporter of cars for Suzuki. They are closing down manufacturing in Japan and transferring to India. It's an outstanding example of Make in India campaign that the government wants. I had the privilege of writing the foreword for his book also. So when Mr. Sinha came, I had no difficulty in agreeing that leadership theme is very important. And internationally well-known corporate leader who has also come to India and is well known here is Jack Welch of GE. But his successor, Jeff Immelt, is as good a leader, in some respects maybe even more sensible. And these two together help us to understand one factor about leadership, that charisma is useful, but it's also dangerous. Jack Welch has charisma. He could do some wrong things as well. You need a professional leader who may lack charisma, but is very systematic, methodical, value-based, predictable, and will build his succession from within the organization. I think it will be useful to acknowledge two outstanding social leaders in the country, non-political, but economy-related social leaders. One is Kurian. His mission of building the Dairy Development Board, Amul now, the only consumer brand which stands up out against 9 multinational consumer brands. The legacy is continuing. He had his problems. He had difficulty leading the organization. He fought with his successor. So leaders have their weaknesses. But what he has built, the model, the idea of cooperative, the producer getting a fair share of the revenue, a knock at the inequality problem, creating employment at the source, therefore avoiding revolutions and various kinds of discontinuities. And more recently, Sridharan, who is now leading, every Indian metro is now having a metro. Delhi began with his metro, but his example, despite his bypass surgery, 80 plus, he is available as a leader to motivate, and many of his chelas from Delhi metro are running the other metros elsewhere in the country. So I talked about value-based leadership, vision and strategy-based leadership. Let me now come to the third major area where we need leadership in the country, is organization development and human resource development, people. So I talked about business context. Now the OD, HRD area, I think the book recognizes this. J.R.D. Tata would be among the stalwarts. He was not as astute a businessman as T.D. Birla, but in terms of people management and development, encouraging talent, he was a great leader. And under him grew other giants. This is a mark of a great leader, that he doesn't have mediocre people under him, but the people, each one of them is outstanding, could be as good as him, could succeed him as the group head, if the Parsi constraint was not there. Among those, some of you may have met, for a long time, Telco was known as the mother company in the automobile industry. Tisco was known as the mother company in the steel industry, from where a lot of steel executives came. Later on, BHEL became the mother company in the power sector. IOC was a mother company in the oil sector. JRD and his top stalwarts, Murgaonkar, Darbari Seth, F.C. Kohli, who is recognized now as the father of the Indian IT industry. But I would not include Rishi Modi on that list for the same reason that Dr. Vikram Singh. Rishi Modi was a great people leader in Tata Steel, unions, workers, but he was not a disciplined leader. He rebelled against the group chat. He even cited, there were reports that he would be inciting union agitation against the Ratan Tata leadership. So Ratan Tata had to take a firm stand at some point of time, and I think it is a mark of a good leader that you can not only be empowering and so on, but where necessary, strike. And Pritam Singh's several quotations, Sanskrit quotations, inspire me to at least make one. Paritranaya sadhunam, vinachaya dushkritam. The leader, many Indian leaders have this weakness. They are soft leaders. They encourage people when they perform, but they are not able to chop dead wood. One leader who has steeled himself to do it, Azim Premji, you might have read reports that after appraisals, he has let 500 people go. At one go. He has also donated 25,000 crores for education, the greatest act of philanthropy of any Indian business. Among the banks, the service sector, non-manufacturing sector, I had the privilege of interacting with R.K. Talwar of State Bank of India, the first non-white chairman of the State Bank of India. Age of 46, he became chairman. Ishwar Dayal, S.K. Bhattacharya from IIM Ahmedabad, myself, Nitish Dey from IIM Calcutta, we were the consultants. They were working on the budgetary systems and structure. We were working on the behavioral aspects of leadership, conflict resolution, change management, values. And out of Talwar's leadership grew Wagul, who set up ICICI, which has grown a great deal. And it is the organization with the largest number of female executives. If you look for gender justice, it is ICICI. And Wagul's chair, Kamath, is now chair of the Asian Bank of Development, with China, India, several companies. That's the kind of pipeline. About ITC, the more charismatic leader, Ajit Haksar, is well known. But the person who really built organization development in HRD and ITC, which provided the human capital for all the diversifications that have taken place later. ITC has achieved something remarkable globally. Very few companies are successful in making 50% diversification. Their original core business comes down to 50% of turnover and profit, and new businesses are raised up to 50%. The chairman who did this was Jagdish Sapru. He was not an aggressive, dominant chairman. He was replacing a strong earlier chairman, Ajit Haksar. But during Sapru's time, people like Rajan Brijnath, Zahid Ganji, Monu Basu, the MDG, Management Development Group of ITC, built the talent, and it became one of the benchmarks for various OD and HRD processes in the country. I was very pleasantly surprised in 1976 to be called to meet D.V. Kapoor in his office. D.V. Kapoor was earlier in PHCL. He was the first chairman, in my experience, who wanted my help, not in strategy, not in vision, not in organization structure. He wanted my help in building management systems and processes in NTPC. Generally in India, we have a very high level of indiscipline. You will see that no queue is straight in India, either in a buffet, dinner, or at the airport, or in a bank. Always it's tera meda. People are trying to. So he said, Dr. Atreya, I am very aware. I am having now, Mrs. Gandhi wants me to build huge power projects. In power project, to do it within 36 months, you need discipline, you need system, time frames, milestones. And I therefore want to create an organization which is initially based on very sound management systems and processes. And NTPC has succeeded today in replacing the SEBs, state electricity boards, as a major power supplier, mainly because of the foundation of management systems with which Kapoor began. The second industry where many leaders like Nandan Nilekani, for example, outstanding leader, who have succeeded is IT, and what they have created for the first time is a global delivery system model. To have people working in India and have their non-manufactured services delivered worldwide requires a great deal of discipline, systems and processes. And Narayana Murthy was the first IT leader who talked about, we want processes which are person independent. In the typical Indian organization, every man will come and change the process the way he likes. And every promoted officer will say that, what was my boss doing? The previous incumbent, I've inherited chaos here, I have to sort it out, and he will make all kinds of changes. Now, in an organized company, you cannot make a system change without first putting up a request, having it approved. So when India went into liberalization, for the first time we went into quality systems. ISO 9000, now very well known, very widely spread. Even today, we are finding difficulty in the Indian pharma industry, where factory after factory is being closing down because of FDA inspections, and the share prices are falling along with them. And we have to regain the confidence of the American regulator. One other leader who was strong on systems, not so much on banking, finance or strategies, Deepak Parekh in HDFC. It was the first housing finance company which had a strategy of branch banking around the country, same kind of logo, same systems, cut down the lead time from between application and dispensing the loan, and they were a pre-runner of today's e-retail industry. I'd like to conclude with one last point, that what we now need to see in Indian organizations is not a current leadership, which is necessary, chairman, directors, senior management. In the long run, whether India will catch up, even part of the way. China is today 5 times the size of the Indian economy. This gives them enormous economic and military power. There is no way in which we can fight Arunachal Pradesh if they decide to invade. We can try and go to the United Nations and build alliances and so on. But if we were to meet that kind of a competition, we need a leadership pipeline. Every company needs to look at where are our leaders for the next 30 years. Begin to identify the talent, stream them, and have at every level options that are available. Now, the leadership pipeline idea first caught on in the PSUs because they were not driven only by cost and profits. And Tauro at Indian Oil Corporation was one of my first experiences where he said, Dr. Athreya, please help us. We want to invest in the development of all our executives and managers, even if we cannot utilize all of them. Some of them may go to other oil companies, some of them may go to other industries, some of them may go to the private oil sector as and when it comes up. But we want to develop as much talent as we can, I can afford it. So it was an ITC that we built career path models for every senior position. And every engineer, officer was systematically rotated depending on his potential, depending on the kind of job for which he was being groomed in the future. And this is now becoming more widespread practice. And I see now in groups like Aditya Birla, Mahindra, Bharat Forge, TTK Group, the Harishchandra Singhania Group, many of them, career planning and succession planning is receiving a lot of attention. But still we have one huge gap. Good corporate governance requires that we have a great deal better succession planning for board members at the moment, both for full-time directors as well as independent directors, who in recent events it has been asked, are directors capable of challenging the chairman, raising questions? Only then a value system, various kinds of infringements can be discussed in the board, and we have still not reached that level of director material which needs to be groomed and developed, which can stand up to either an owner leader or an appointed leader, and we may have more and more expatriate leaders also in some of our companies. So I think we have progressed a great deal from where we were in 1967 when I came back to IIM Calcutta, and again in 1978 when I came back to the post-emergency India. But in terms of international benchmarking and with China in particular, we have a long way to go. And books like this, documenting Indian experience, 12 workshops, 56 individual leaders writing their experience, the 3 authors putting it together. This will spark, I think, more thinking and review, reminiscing, sharing experiences. So I hope this book will start a trend where there may be more imitators. That will be good for the country. more people, more experiences, research sharing. We may also have to have differentiated leadership, different industries, different regions of the country, cultural differences, just like multinationals have to adjust to intercultural management practices. So once again, I commend the authors, I commend WIMSTEC, the publisher, and all of you for staying so late and listening to me. It is 9 o'clock. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.